What's your favorite moment in your life? And ixnay on getting married and having babies. Everybody's going to say that. I want a different answer.
My favorite moment in my life, I think different stages of our lives, we have different favorite moments. But you want me to go way back or?
Whatever you decide your favorite moment is.
Okay, so I think one of my favorite moments, just me personally, was learning to surf. I think it was the summer of my 8th grade year going into 9th grade. We don't usually surf. Most of us Samoan guys were at the park playing basketball, football, or rugby, or we're park freaks, right?
Uh-huh.
One of my best friends, Hawaiian guy, Tommy Wong, him and his family surfed.
Uh-huh.
And so I hung out with him a lot. And one summer he decided, we were with him at the beach, and he says, hey, let's go surf. And so we tried it, and we made it a part of our routine. We'd still go and do our thing on a nice Hawaiian summer, playing a lot of ball, eating good food. But then we put surfing into our schedule, our routine, and I think that was an amazing experience. I can resolve a lot of current day issues that I struggle with just revisiting those memories of surfing on the North Shore of Hawaii.
Do you think if you had a surfboard today, you could still get out there and get after it?
I don't know. You have to be fit and conditioned to paddle in that current and to be able to get up and ride the wave, balance. But if I lived on a beach, I guarantee you I would be surfing every day. I would have continued to do that. To me, it's one of the greatest life sports.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's off the top of my head. That's probably one of my favorite things.
Hey, you often talk about football with me, but it sounds like, if you could only do one sport for the rest of your life, what would it be?
It'd be in the ocean, surfing.
It'd be in the ocean?
Surfing, yeah.
Yeah.
Football was actually painful.
I bet.
Friday nights were fun, but Monday through Thursday, yeah, that was pain.
Yeah. Tell me about, a difficult moment in your life, something where you were. Tell me about a difficult moment in your life.
The one that just comes to my mind right now is just being a young newlywed with kids on the way, and just the responsibility of providing for all of their needs and not being in a position at that time I didn't feel confident in my ability to do it, to provide financially for their needs. That, when you talk about hard, that stage was hard for me personally.
What did it feel like?
Hopeless, discouraging. I was really hard on myself because I had a lot of time to prepare for that period, that stage of my life. But it wasn't emphasized in my life, and I went through the motions, went on a mission, came home, went to school, played some football, but I didn't really focus my education on, getting certified in anything. I went to school to play football, as opposed to what I teach my own kids. Go to school, use football as a vehicle to get you your education so you can provide, more abundantly than I did.
Right. And I'm going to say that, we all, one of my employees, I love the 20-somethings because they're living in a couple of 100 square feet. And for them, it's a castle because, they're away from mom and dad and it's awesome and they're on their own. I look at that and I'm thinking, man, I'm glad I'm not there anymore. But they're happy and they're loving it. They've got munchkins and they've got a kitchen about the size of the studio,
right?
And it's beautiful for them. I've been there. I lived in a place that was it was a smallish house that was turned into a threeplex, and we lived upstairs. and it got to be over 100 degrees in the summer because there was AC, but it was controlled by the people downstairs. And they had a very different set of conditions. And of course, we couldn't even open the windows because they were sealed shut. I guess the landlord learned from previous experiences. So we just learned not to be there. But I guess, the reason I'm going there is it's tough when we're young for all of us. A person, you're 20-something, your skills are pretty much limited to, in my case, flipping hamburgers.
Mm-hmm.
But still, we beat ourselves up. Nobody's
Right.
We're really good at beating ourselves up. You said hopeless.
Mm-hmm.
Paint a picture about that hopeless word.
I just couldn't find a way to increase, or didn't seem like I had doors or opportunities.
Uh-huh.
And so I looked at what I was doing and what it would take for me to be able to provide adequately.
Uh-huh.
And it was a lot of hours. And so a lot of hours in a day, knowing that I didn't have any education. At the time, no real marketable skills, English, learning, just coming from a small island town, simple lifestyle. And the move to Utah, it's more complex, competitive. And so I'm accustomed to the simple life, going with little. It's no big deal. But when you get married and you move here, and my wife is from here, they have different standards.
Right.
And to realize that the way I perceived, my life would be and the way she does, I needed to do a little bit more, and I just wasn't conditioned that way in my mind. So I could go work hours, all day, every day, but at some point your kids are going to need to see you. They're going to need to have their dad. And
Right.
I was totally fine with just leaving, traveling, being gone for months at a time to provide the income we needed. But McKay, my wife, the wiser of the two of us, she made sure I understood that you need to be present in their lives. Their success is dependent on your role too. So
It's not just about the nickels.
yeah, not just about the nickels. And so we just made it work,
What did you do to yourself when you were in those lows? You said it was. Go ahead.
After work, I'd come home late at night, and I wouldn't go in the house. I'd just go to the backyard and kind of try to figure things out.
Uh-huh.
And I think I heard my son once. He goes, McKay was still up when I got home, and he was looking out his back window, and he yelled to McKay. He goes, "Mom, Dad's talking to the moon again." I didn't know he knew, but I'd come home and I just sit in the backyard thinking, what am I going to do, And so when you find yourself in that position, you find ways to make things work. And so that's the other side of the coin, is we found ways to overcome that.
That's my next question, is how did you respond? What are those ways?
We got creative. Back then, we started to use the Burr method with real estate. I owned a little house. Created a rental contract for that house and bought another house. McKay and we would always look for vacant homes in the neighborhoods, and we'd look them up on the county land records and see if there was value, and then we'd talk to the banks. And McKay, being the person she is, I had her call the banks because she is very persuasive. She has all this, positive energy, and people really like working with her. And so she was able to pull those properties out of their portfolios and have someone just provide an opportunity for us to purchase the home. And so one house turned into two, and then we were working on 3 and 4. And then 9/11 hit, and the bank issues hit and kind of disrupted that process. But at the time, that's what we did, and it was working fine. And so, I don't know, hopefully that happens again. The market's way different today, but for me, anybody can do real estate. But other ways to make money, you have to be a professional. You have to have a master's or a doctorate to doctors, lawyers, corporate level people. I don't. That's not where my zone of genius, and I don't have those credentials, right? And so I have to be creative. And at the time, real estate just was really the only option. So,
right. But it worked for you.
Yeah, it worked for a while, and then, like I said, 9/11 hit a lot of us. A lot of people had to make some changes. A lot of people lost, and so.
So how often were you talking to the moon?
A few times a week. But that's where I kind of tried to put things together. I read, I learned from anybody I could. And I just, looking back, the one regret I have is that I wasn't able to capitalize on it. When 9/11, when 2008, when the banks crashed, a lot of us lost everything.
Right.
And so we had to make some quick changes and adapt. But after that happened, McKay, she's talented. Hapari showed up shortly after that. It's a swimsuit company that McKay was a part owner of. And she helped build that company to a very successful program. So it was like one door open, one shut. So
okay. When you were talking to the moon, because this is awesome, we need to talk about talking to the moon. I kind of wish now at times in my life that I would have done more talking to the moon. What kind of stuff were you? I'm sure you were talking to God.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining that you were just going to say, you were saying something like, "Hey God, I'm putting everything in that I got, and there's nothing left, and it's not enough." Did it sound like that?
Sometimes. Other times I was complaining. I remember clearly one day I said, "How in the world did you let me get into this position? I got a wife and 3 kids, and I can't even provide for them. What were you thinking, God?" And I could, and the response was, "I didn't do that. You did that." What are you going to do, son? And so, you know what? Then the reinforcement comes in. Whenever you talk to the moon or you reach out to your higher power, you know that you don't know how it's going to turn out, but you know that it's going to turn out in a way that's going to serve you. And so for me, I think transitioning from a little island boy in Hawaii, the son of, immigrant parents and grandparents, and then moving to Utah, that's a lot of transition in one generation.
Yes, it is.
And so the big message that screamed out to me through those conversations with the moon was my role, just my own personal calling, I guess I could say, was to break cycles that maybe were counterproductive or wouldn't serve me or my current family. And I needed to put them in the best position to succeed and enjoy life to the fullest. That was the goal. And so I was kind of having to become whatever I needed to be as a man or as a dad to ensure that some of the regrets that I inherited in some ways or created for myself was going to stop with me. And so that's the conversations with the moon was pretty much that was the underlying message for me. And so I could either reject it or just embrace it. And so the best I could, I embraced.
What I see you doing is actually finding a way to manage stuff that most of us men don't find a way to manage. It's one of those things where, and this is one of those cycles that is always the case for us. You've got an issue. Maybe you're short on money, the way you describe, and you probably had whatever level of conversation with McKay, your wife, that you'd had, but some of it, and tell me if I'm wrong, but you probably just don't want to keep unloading on her because that adds to her plate. So that eliminates her as a person that you can always go to. And I'm not saying this is right. I'm saying this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
So for that reason, you choose not to always unload your question marks, your problems, your concerns, your stresses on her. I'm sure women would always love to have us do that. They say they would love to have us do that, but we're not going to always do that. And then you go through the rest of the list. You're not going to unload that on another woman. That would be a bigger problem. There's nobody else to unload that on. So the only thing we've got left is talking to the moon. And most of us guys don't even think of that. I mean, you at least thought of talking to the moon. You were talking. The rest of us, we just go into the corner and self-isolate and talk to nobody. And then there's all that darkness and poison and isolation and loneliness there somewhere near the stomach.
Yeah, my wife and kids, it's like the best thing that ever happened to me.
Uh-huh.
Right? That's all of us, I think. It's the most amazing thing that ever happened to me. And when I realized that parts of me put them at risk, just the way I do things, my temper, my attitude towards things, there's a lot of flaws that I didn't realize that I could go protect my family against predators or anything outside.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized that the most risk they're facing is if I'm not keeping myself in check.
Right.
A bad dad, a mean dad, an abusive dad. And where we come from, a lot of abuse, a lot of it. Every day you see it. If it's not happening to you, it's happening around you. And so it's reinforced, and it's there's no boundary there.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming here, marrying my wife and having my kids, fast forward, right? I realized that some of those attributes is in me, and it's being passed on to my kids when they cross the boundary.
Right.
There's hell to pay. There's a lot of heat. In this country, it's labeled as abuse. Where I come from, that's parenting 101.
That's how to live your life.
So that was terrifying for me.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said earlier, my wife and kids, best thing that ever happened to me. Realizing that I was a risk to them, I thought, you know what? I have to evolve, and I have to do it really quick, Garth. And so, in a way, that's purpose for me. Not screwing my kids up and keeping the smile on McKay's face. Constantly need to get better at that stuff, but
yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if I'm heading in the right direction.
I think you are. It's funny when for us guys in the money department, if you don't make enough, you feel bad. You feel like you're failing the family. If you make more than enough, then there's the risk of feeling like, give me your money and then go away.
Yeah, I wouldn't know what that's like. I missed out on that one.
And I don't even know that it has to be a more than enough thing. I know a guy who is a solar salesman, and he's living in a condo. He's not making $1 million a year. But and this was way before I started this podcast, Manalizing.
Mm-hmm.
This was years ago. He told me that was his life. It was like bring home the paycheck and then go do your thing. Leave the rest of us alone. Okay. And, that may be unfair to his wife. But it's probably a joint thing. It's something that he minimum allowed. And he could have said, and I'm speaking through me,
right.
Because I did very similar things. He could have said, no,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to spend time with the kids. I'm going to, this is what this family looks like, or, from a spiritual standpoint, from a emotional standpoint. I'm here. I belong here. I have these principles that are important to me, and I'm not going to sacrifice those simply because you want to punish me or simply because you want to do something else.
Right.
He felt like a victim, as did I at a time, but it's not up to the wives to change that. It's up to us.
True.
So you say that's not a problem you've had. Feel grateful for that.
No, I think.
And I think even if you did make
I think-
seven figures a year, you still wouldn't have that problem.
No, I think we all have that victim in different ways.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So we could all fall into, regardless of where we are, when it comes to the just our role as men. Because even though I didn't experience what you had stated, I still find myself in victim in other ways. And it's like something that you constantly have to keep in check. You can easily get up in the morning and already be there.
Uh-huh.
And then that kind of dictates the day, your attitude, the vibe you give off. And so I think there's some things that every day we just have to keep in check.
You know, Todd, I was interviewing him, and he was a cop, and he would come home, he said, at times with cop issues. It was like, today I just arrested a guy who'd raped 4 little kids.
Yeah.
And I wanted to kill him, and I couldn't. And eventually the wife says, I can't handle these stories. I can't.
Yeah.
And so he turns to Jack Daniels, his next best friend.
Yeah.
And, Jack is not a very good best friend. So then he said he was drinking a half gallon a day. We all like to find our own way of going into victim mode.
Yeah.
I think it's true that as strong as we like to make people think we are, we can be kind of
Weak.
weak.
No, I agree. It's humbling, ain't it?
Yeah. So you had those moments where you were feeling weak in your case, and one of my questions is what happened next, and maybe part of that is talking to the moon. Did you do anything else? What happened next?
I think the when things got at its lowest, just anger filled heart. A lot of times I'd go for long drives because I just needed to be. If I was around and make care of the kids, and I was feeling the way I was feeling, I would hurt somebody or break something or just create drama in the home. Traumatize my kids, so I had to leave. I remember one occasion, it was a Christmas, and Cy was being a knucklehead, my oldest. He kept picking on my daughter in front of the family, and when you got a bunch of Polynesians together, there's some standards that you have to follow, and whenever your kids are out of line, you got to check it. Right then and there. Don't wait. If it distracts from what's going on, then it has to be addressed. And so I pulled Cy aside, and I brought my daughter, and we went into the room, and I pleaded with Cy. I said, brother, I need you to leave your sister alone. It's disrespect, what's disrupting what's going on, and he wasn't hearing it. And so we went back into the family setting. This Christmas Eve, dude, that's how bad it was. And he did it again. And I lost it. I was about to kick his ass in front of, just drag him out. And then when I grabbed him and took him to do it, all my siblings jumped to his rescue.
All of your siblings. So you were a family reunion.
I was thinking, hold up. You guys all saw his conduct. This is what usually happens when this kind of behavior occurs from our kids, we handle it here and now. Why in the world are you guys stopping me from doing what's always been done, right?
Right.
And so they separate us and they kick me out of the house.
Whoa.
And my older brother comes out with me and he goes, "Hey man, what happened?" I said, "Hey man, you saw him. Would you have tolerated that?" And he goes, "No." I said, "Well, tell me where I overstepped my bounds." And he goes, maybe something along the line. Well, I think we're in Utah now. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, so I said, "Okay, I'm out. I cannot go back in there." I was just so upset at my son. And you give him everything.
Uh-huh.
So I left, and he ran out of the house. I remember. And he says, "Hey, Dad, my bad. Sorry, I didn't mean to get you kicked out." And I said, "Brother, I told you what I need you to do, and you didn't do it." And I said, "After everything I do for you, you know how much I do for you, right?" Just tears started to pour out of his eyes. He goes, then he just acknowledged that he screwed up, and I said, "Well, I got to go. If I don't go, it's going to go bad." So I left. But it felt, at least I felt good that he acknowledged that he took responsibility for that. So the next time we got together, I said, "Okay, these are the rules. Son, I need you to follow them." And we got to that place a few times, but I was so volatile and out of control. I could snap at any time, and that's the reality in my home. My kids, it's not, they remember who I was once upon a time. And so I didn't know how to restrain that demon inside of me. I drive by the prison knowing that on any given day I could be in an orange jumpsuit sitting in one of those cell blocks.
Uh-huh.
Because of what I knew I was capable of. And if you cross me, like Cy just crossed me, and I was about to beat his ass
Uh-huh.
to teach him the message that when I tell you to do something,
It happens.
you will do it for the rest of your life. If you do this again, it's going to get worse. And he did do it again. I don't know if I should say some of the stuff I did because my line of work. But anyway, moments like that, he hurt me, I hurt him, and we just know we don't want to hurt each other again. And so I think, I was pretty psycho. I had some rough edges as a young dad. And just where we came from, we were exposed to a lot of violence, assaults, and getting just beaten bad. I've seen fights here in Utah. They don't compare.
They don't.
You can have a fight here, and I could watch it and see, you know what, that's nothing. That's nickel and dime. If you want to see combat, have a Samoan and Tongan, have a rivalry between Samoans and Tongans on the streets.
Uh-huh.
Pacific Islanders. Samoans and Tongans are physically probably the biggest, strongest
Right.
of all the Pacific Islander groups. And I remember seeing rivalries in our town. Every year there was often a rivalry between different races, and those racial battles, they were brutal. And so you kind of see that, and it becomes a part of you. You see how we're disciplined. And so when I came here to Utah, I didn't change. The environment changed. And people don't do that here.
Yeah. And, I'm not, one of my rules for doing this is I'm not going to just sit here and listen to you be vulnerable. I feel like it's my responsibility to also be vulnerable at a moment like that. Different but similar. So in my case, I think it might have been Christmas Eve too, but there was a family get-together. And there was some photo that everybody was looking at. And I was like, show that to me. So it was coming towards me, and then my son, my stepson, who was probably, 8 at the time, runs over and grabs it, shows it to everybody, and makes sure that I see it last. So it was a photo. It doesn't really matter. But the fact that he was taking control of what was important at the moment and using it to stick it to me pissed me off. So, I basically say, show me the photo. I don't even remember what the photo was about. But finally, I grabbed it, and then that damaged the photo. And so then I'm yelling at the kid, told him to go outside, and it was Magna. Apparently, it's unsafe to send a kid outside. So
yeah.
I went outside, and I waited for the party to be done, and I put myself in timeout until those people came out because they were done. A low point in the marriage, and it was over a stupid thing. But at that time, that was fresh after a divorce where I was very much aware of when somebody was trying to show me up, prove that I am less than. And so for an 8-year-old kid to do this, so then I go to a place of, why do I have to be saluting this 8-year-old?
Goes across all.
Some flavor of this happens with everybody. Your response was for you to leave and you to drive around. It kind of separated you. Did you go down that road of I'm ruled by my children? What was going on in your mind as you were driving away?
No, it was just driven by anger. It was winter, it was cold. And so I drove it and I parked and just sat and thought. And I think talking to the moon again, right?
Uh-huh.
Going through the stages, you're in victim stance, and then just trying to calm myself. And eventually going home knowing how I'll have to address it, knowing I'll have to be accountable for it.
Yeah.
How embarrassing it was for me as your wife to blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
But I think good came of it because, one, I had to change things, and it's just difficult. But my relationship with my kids, that's the one thing I maintained is, I'm flawed, but, I'm always there for you. And I learned, I work with a bunch of therapists, and a lot of these therapists in these programs, particularly one, the first key principle is relationship.
Uh-huh.
Everything that you have to offer can only pass through a healthy relationship. And if you don't have a healthy relationship, all the knowledge, wisdom, and love you have to give won't be received by the next party. So in this case, my kids, I had to maintain that. And so it was like science, the way it was presented.
Uh-huh.
It was scientific. And so I said, well, if that's all it is, then I can do that. And so if anything, not perfect relationships, I could have done a lot better. A lot of things I missed out on, but for the most part, it was strong enough for anything that I had to offer was accepted. And then fast forward now, my kids, we have a good relationship.
Uh-huh.
They're doing well. I mustered up all the energy I had to just barely meet the minimum requirement to have my kids say I'm a good dad.
I think they might argue with that. So that moment, as rough on you as it was, and the thought occurs to me that if you're that angry, the last place you ought to be is in an automobile. But there weren't any other options. This is the place that us men put ourselves into. If you're not going to get in front of a car or in front of a wheel, what else are you going to do? You go back in and beat somebody.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of other options.
Yeah, and anything, you put yourself at risk because if you do something stupid that you can't take back, right?
Right.
You made things worse. The one thing you're living your life for, you damage it even more, right? So if you turn to anything, like you said, Jack Daniels, other women, you've lost all of it, right?
Right.
And so, so for me, Garth, I just drove around the lake.
Uh-huh.
Like, your house is a beautiful home on the lake. I drove right here on Redwood and run around the whole lake. I had no idea the lake was that big, though. I was not mad by the time I turned the corner coming up by Spanish Fork.
Yeah, Goshen, Santaquin. That is a long drive.
It's a long drive. I thought, anyway.
But it's beautiful.
Or I'll go up the canyon. Drive the loop. You and I both appreciate nature. Mm-hmm. The stones, the mountains, the trees. And so those things are designed to ground us and help us heal and recover. So
that's my last question is well, I'm trying to decide between two. One is, what advice would you give another man that's having that same sort of an issue, maybe where the kids are being impossible or the wife is being impossible? The other one is, how did that moment serve you? You pick. Which of those questions you think has the most?
I can answer both of them. The second one, how did it serve me? You experience that. Those are experiences that affect you emotionally, right? And so how do you feel inside of your own skin when you resort to that type of treatment or behavior?
Right.
It doesn't feel good. And so the key is we got to feel comfortable inside of our own skin. Self-betrayal, something we talked about before. This team of therapists I mentioned earlier.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, self-betrayal too. That's one thing they talk about. It says you have to make sure that you don't betray your own conscience because it'll affect the way you feel. And so if you keep betraying yourself, selling out is the word I like to use, because when you sell out on yourself or anybody, that's bad form, and it never has good results. So when we as men sell out on ourselves, we become ill inside. And when we're ill inside, we have to remedy that. And we can have positive remedies or negative, right? And so that's important. We have to take care of ourselves, and any self-betraying thoughts and behaviors, those things have to go. And as far as how it served me is, I didn't like those experiences, and I try not to have them anymore. I try to avoid them at best, and if I live within my integrity, being true.
But how do you not have them? Let's say that another Christmas comes and you still got a child who is still bugging another child, and you ask him to not, and he still keeps on doing it. So how do you?
Yeah, but see, that Christmas was a bad Christmas. So you have 365 days to address that issue before the next Christmas showed up. So the next Christmas is going to be awesome because January 1st, 2nd, 3rd, February, March, April, May, you learn from that incident, and you adapted. You built the relationship. You came to you addressed the issue when it's not an issue, right?
Uh-huh.
And so that's all it was. Is the next Christmas is going to be awesome because the next 365 days we're going to ensure that doesn't happen again. And so you got to address the issue. It's like correcting a problem before the problem is even ever a problem.
Right.
So my son, I had him read a book that talks about this, Anatomy of Peace, and he didn't understand. There's a pyramid in there, and it's called the change pyramid. And at the very top, at the top section of the pyramid, I think it was layered into like 5 different areas. The very top was correct. And so he didn't understand the pyramid. Whereas if you want to avoid a problem, there's different layers to it. The last resort is correcting the problem. Hey, you can't do that. Stop right now. That's the last resort.
And that's the one that us guys always go to as the first
we
resort.
always go to. And so he said, Dad, I don't understand that pyramid. And I said, okay, let me help you understand it. Let's talk about your drug problem, son. And he goes, excuse me? Yeah, your drug problem. Tell me about your drug problem. And he goes, well, Dad, I don't have a drug problem. And I go, yeah, you don't. So why is that? Did I have to correct you? Did I have to tell you not to do drugs for you to stop? And he says, well, no. Well, Dad, we always talked about it over the years when we were young. We talked about how drugs are bad for you. You guys taught us, and you love us, and you've treated us well, and you've always been there for us. And so I never really cared to use drugs. And then And I say, okay, so do you understand how we corrected your drug problem? Then he says, yeah, kind of. I said, we corrected your drug problem when you were 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We didn't wait till you were 15 and you experimented with the drugs for the first time and used and got addicted, and then come in and say you can't do that anymore. Correcting your drug problem happened when you was born, from the time you was born till now. So that's how you resolve problems. You address them before they even become an issue, right? Before they're a problem. And so as far as the Christmas thing, I'm not saying I'm perfect, because I'm still a product of my environment and I still get triggered. We go to a restaurant and you got some people just being rude, disrespectful, and obnoxious. Uh-huh. Our role back home is to make that go away fast. And so here, I just say, okay, let's go to a different place. This is going to be too hard for me to get through. I probably won't be able to restrain myself if this guy keeps doing what he's doing. I might address it, and so I have to leave, because there's still triggers inside of me. It's still DNA level stuff that I have to be cautious.
Right.
So, and then what was your other question? Advice.
Yeah. What advice would you give a man?
Yeah, no man is an island. We can't isolate. You have to have a wingman in the good sense, right? Remember Rob? He said, wingman has kind of a negative connotation to it.
True.
But in a positive way, you need support. Everybody, no one is an island. I go to church on Sundays. That second hour, that's all us men talking about a gospel principle, and this stuff comes up, And so we support each other. It's only 1 hour, but it's guys getting together talking. We have dinner sometimes with our circle of friends. We meet, and that's where we get support. We have siblings, we have brothers, people that are close to us. Doesn't matter where. We have people at work. You can always get support or just enjoy a healthy relationship. Some of the things we need, we don't have, we're not equipped with. It is embedded in other people, other men. And so I gain strength from something that you offer me. You validating me as a man, accepting me as a person, gives me value. So on a bad day, I can say, well, Garth's my dude. He thinks I'm awesome. So,
I'm hearing tens of thousands of men saying, man, I wish I had that. I don't have that. I must be worthless. And I think my response to that is, you're a man. You can do hard things.
Go get it.
This is easy.
Yeah, get it.
That's a problem you just identified. Go solve it.
And then the best way to do it is to be that guy. Be him. If you see somebody having a hard time, or a dude in your circle that's having a hard time, you go make sure you pick him up, relate to him. Don't minimize things, but just normalize it. You're not alone. You can do it.
All you got to do is listen.
Yeah, listen. So, but, being a man, there's a lot of joy to it.
There can be.
If you fulfill your role and you prove yourself to yourself as a man, and you just accept what you are, and be okay with it. You're good. You can get better.
Right.
Laugh at things, but a man that's isolated, my heart goes out to that guy.
It's a tough place.
Yeah, it's. Yeah, none of us should be alone, Garth. So.
And we all are, and that's part of why we're doing this podcast. I think a lot of us just have grown up thinking that being an island is what our life is.
Yeah.
And that only has to be until we decide to change it to something else.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Pele.
You bet. Thanks for your time. Bye.
Let's see.
I hope that was